On this episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast, we talk about You Fail Me by Converge because I was out of ideas and Converge is always a good idea.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Bronze Metalist podcast. I'm Kayle.
I'm OJ.
We're two professional broadcasters. We like metal and we like to talk about it. And today we're talking about another Converge album, which is You Fail Me.
Yes.
Their album from 2004 is their follow-up for Jane Doe.
Right.
And it's an album that I feel like I have kind of slept on for quite some time. There was always something... For whatever reason, I think it's just because it comes right after Jane Doe.
It's in the shadow of a great, you know?
I don't know if this is anybody's favorite Converge album.
It's different. It's different than some of the other stuff I've heard.
It's different, but it's also... But it's very much a stylistic in-between for Jane Doe and No Heroes. Because Jane, really, in the... scope of their entire career, Jane Doe is the one that sticks out stylistically.
Sure.
Because nothing else that they have made is quite so absolutely fucking unhinged as Jane Doe. And so it like beautifully so. But the album is a kind of a sonic nightmare in the best way possible.
Right.
And so much of what they've done since then, pretty much everything since they've done since then is so much tighter instrumentally. And that's only become more the case as their career has gone on. Like their most recent album, right? Their most recent album as just them without, besides Blood Moon.
Right. With Jasmine Wolfe.
Yeah. God, stop it. The Dusk in Us from 2017.
Yes.
Like that is very tight instrumentally. And, doesn't really kind of go as far afield as stuff on Jane Doe does. And before that, I have, a banner up for, oh God, I can't remember the name of the album off the top of my head, actually.
Like in your living room?
There's a song on it called The High Cost of Playing God, but that is not When Forever Comes Crashing is the name of the album. That one is, it feels very clearly to be on the tail end of their messy first decade of we're a hardcore punk band from Boston and we I guess they're from Salem, but from the Boston area, and we've grown up listening to not just punk but metal too, so we're going to bring in some of that influence, but lots of very kind of gross 90s Boston hardcore stuff, and that's kind of what that music was. And you can see where they were starting to go on When Forever Comes Crashing, but they weren't quite there yet. And Jane Doe is this really big turning point, and then this album comes right after it and is I think it really, really good in its own right, but I think it kind of gets forgotten about. But also the version that we both listened to, because you had to listen to, is the Redux version that came out in 2017, 2016. I can't remember.
It was 2016.
But they did a remix and remaster of it. And I think that kind of brought it back into people's attention as this is really good and deserves to be thought of as highly as their other material. But we'll talk more about that later. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing fantastic.
That's
actually
great.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I haven't been writing my book. Writing my book?
You haven't been writing your book?
No, I haven't. I'm working on the Great American Novel. I meant riding my bike is what I meant to say. I haven't been doing that enough. I've been... what have I been doing? I've been watching that the Sandman.
The Sandman.
Watching the Sandman.
Mr. Sandman.
Yes.
Send me a man. Have you seen that video?
No, I have not.
It's a funny thing.
I thought you were just making that up at the top of your head.
No, there's a thing.
But not much else is going on. I guess you're taking off this weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to Las Vegas. I'm going to bet it all on black. I'm going to win so much money. No, I'm playing.
Probably not gambling.
I'm playing Dungeons & Dragons with my friends. Because
with his real friends.
Yeah, with my real friends. Not you people I play with Dungeons & Dragons, on Sunday. You're not my real friends.
Right. Oh, I know.
Now all I can think of is a pop punk band called Real Friends. And I've got one of their songs in my head. But no, it was just the most convenient place geographically for us to meet. So that's where we're going. I'm leaving on Saturday on a jet plane. I do know when I'll be back again.
There's a return ticket.
It'll be next Thursday morning. I'm nervous. I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Going to have some good times. Going to kill some monsters. I have one of the other people is also because I'm doing a level 20 one shot.
Right.
And one of the other people, because I kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudged and said, hey, I've never gotten to do this myself as a player. It would be really nice if I could do that. And someone else volunteered and was like, oh, well, I can. And I was like, thank you. Because
you're going to play two one shots.
Yeah. In addition to our regular game, a bunch of material for that. But I made an absolutely, not really a busted character, because I think there are definitely some more insane like level 20 builds that you can pull in certain ways. All I did was make a level 20 champion fighter, and I made some rules from my level 21 shot that the other one is abiding by as well, and is like an allowance for magic items that meant you could have potentially 3 legendary magic items.
Neat.
And everyone gets a free feat, everyone gets a divine blessing, and everyone gets an epic boon. Which are things that, like, epic boons especially are what you get when you've reached level 20 and the DM wants to give you something.
Sure.
Because by that point, there's not really much left to give you.
Yeah, what do you get the guy who has everything?
So
epic boon.
I made this level 20 champion fighter that this DM also decided, okay, you guys all get an artifact too, which is something that I decided against for my game, primarily because artifacts are just kind of a lot.
Yeah.
And like they have random properties that the DM is supposed to roll. And it just seemed like too much. I didn't feel like doing it. And also because they were playing in a good campaign, there's a lot more evil artifact level items than there are explicitly good ones.
Sure.
I was like, you guys are like the heroes. Like, none of you are going to have the worm skull throne. None of you are going to have the fucking wand of Orcus. Like, no one's going to have the hand and eye of Vecna. Like, the vast majority of the artifacts available on D&D Beyond and just in the game in general, because at this point, amongst the different people playing in that game with content sharing enabled, we have access to pretty much every single piece of officially published 5th edition content.
And of course, artifacts would be like the could we, should we argument, whereas the good artificers or whatnot would say we shouldn't. And the bad guys would say, yeah, we should.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
Extremely powerful magic items. Most of them are sentient, so on and so forth. But this game that I'm playing in, we're allowed one. So I was like, okay. It sort of changed things because before that decision was made, I had my build together and then I had to kind of alter things. That also opened up a new possibility. I wanted to use a greatsword, but there's no artifact weapons that are greatsword. But there's one that's a longsword, and I was like, hey, can I make this a greatsword, please?
Sure.
Because it's pretty integral for my build, and there's no other artifact that I would possibly want because I'm playing a fucking fighter.
Right.
And all the other ones are like crazy magic bullshit. And it's like, no, I want to kill people with a really big sword, please. So I get to make it a great sword and that, that sort of thing. We kind of re-flavored it a little bit. But that that freed up one of my legendary magic items, because before that slot was being taken by a Vorpal sword, which that's what this artifact that I chose counts as a Vorpal sword in addition to some other shit. It's like, okay, I absolutely want this one. That means that with that free one, I took a potion of giant size, which when you drink it for 24 hours, your size becomes huge, your hit point total doubles, and your weapons damage dice are tripled.
Wow.
So the default roll for that greatsword will be 6d6. I'm playing a champion fighter, so I have a 15% chance to roll a critical hit every time I roll a d20, which will make it 12d6 plus, if it's a nat 20, that's plus 6d8 from the Vorpal sword. And then if I use Action Surge, I can attack 8 times, potentially 9 if any one of those are a crit, because I have Great Weapon Master. So yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of fun with that.
Sure.
But I'm like, I am such a when I play, I am such a fucking like, I'm so easy to please when it comes to like mechanically playing my character. I just want to get up in a monster's face and hit it a bunch of times. Like I love fighters because the dice goblin in my brain just likes to hear the math rocks go clickety clack, and being able to do that more times than anybody else is like cocaine to me.
Sure.
It's just, oh, I get to roll again and again. It's I love it. It's wonderful.
I get that.
I am an absolute. I did see a thing where it was like, you know, there are different races of dice creature. You're not necessarily a dice goblin. A dice goblin collects everything they see, no matter the quality.
Right.
According to that, I'm more of a dice beholder, because while I have a desire to collect a lot, they need to be a specific kind of thing.
Sure.
Which for me, they need to have gold lettering, number one. Those are my favorite. I have some that are not, and those ones are there to remind the gold dice how good they have it.
I mean, gold numbering.
Numbering, yes. Gold numbering.
Gold pips and gold...
No pips.
No pips.
You don't like pips.
You don't like... Okay.
I don't like pips on my D6s. I want numbers.
Okay. Gold numbers.
Because the rest of them have numbers. You're not going to get a D10 with pips on it. That'd be a mess. That'd be a nightmare.
I would love a D20 with pips.
Oh Jesus!
and have them be. It
would have to be huge.
And have them
to be readable.
To be irregular. I want them. I want them unpatterned.
That's a nightmare. It's making me angry just thinking about it.
I'm so having this commissioned.
God. But yeah, no pips on the D6s. The D4s need to be the good kind, which means they need to have the number that you read at the top of the point.
Yes.
At the bottom on the flat side, get that bullshit out of my face. I don't want that. It's disgusting.
And not the Terry good kind.
Yeah, and the percentile dice need to the 100,
right?
The tens or whatever need to be read perpendicular to the point of the D10.
Okay, perpendicular,
not perpendicular, parallel with the point of the
D10
is what I meant. Because like I have one the set that Drew uses in our Sunday game. The dice have all the other qualities that I like. I really like that set of dice, except the D10 or the D100 is oriented the wrong way for some fucking reason, despite them being, I think, from the same manufacturer as many of my other favorite sets of dice and the same style. It's the black tie-dye with the color. Like, it has everything else I like except that. And it fucking bothers me. And that's why I'm a dice beholder, because I'm so picky about that shit.
Right. What are the other...
there's like Dice Dragon, where you have, you have a massive collection, and you know each and every one that you have, and you have some sort of attachment to them. You could be a Dice Elf, where you have a handful of sets you have a deep emotional attachment to. You can be a Dice Human, where either a Dice Human, your only set of dice is the set that you got with the starter kit, and you either have an extremely deep emotional attachment to them or they're worth nothing to you.
Wow.
That's a dice human right there. I believe a dice dwarf makes their own dice.
Sure.
I'm trying to remember the other ones. There was like dice half elf, where somewhere between human and elf. Dice orc, it doesn't really matter to you. Like the dice themselves don't really matter to you, but you're very superstitious about them.
Really,
and you also believe that they will roll better the harder you throw them. There was also the dice kobold, where you are basically a poorer version of the. There was the dice halfling, I think, where like you just scrape together and buy whatever you can find.
Sure.
And you're happy with that. And the dice kobold is an even poorer version of that, where you have to constantly borrow other people's dice or something like that.
What about a dice Tarask? What would that be?
You eat your dice? I don't know. The Tarask doesn't have any character. It's just a big monster.
Yeah, it's just a big killing machine.
It's just a big old lizard with a really hard shell that deflects magic. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't really have any character to grasp onto. I guess I can't
think of any other. Yeah.
You eat your dice.
You eat your dice, and you don't roll them. You just pitch them at the other players as hard as you can. Chaotically try to murder everybody, all the living people at the table.
That should be the dice orc.
The dice orc.
You just throw the dice at other people. There could be like a dice hobgoblin, where you have a very, you have a large collection like the dice goblin, but when you are ready to play, you line them up all nicely according to their size, and you place each of the dice with their highest number on top.
Of course. What about a dice lich?
A dice lich. That's a great question. What I don't know what a dice lich would be.
Dice lich they would be undead.
Yeah, well, yeah, and whenever a dice displeases you, not only like some people, me for example, when my dice displease me, I throw them in. It's not really a dice jail. I have a little Lego cart that I use for you
call
guys.
it dice jail.
Yeah, I call it the dice jail. It's not actually, you can like buy on like Etsy dice jails that people have made, and they're cute. But I put the dice away. I'm not superstitious about dice, but I do it anyway because it's like, that one's not rolling good. It's going away.
It's fun to do that.
It's fun to do that.
Yeah.
A dice lich, instead, when the dice displease them, they throw them in the trash. Those dice get sacrificed. They get sacrificed, and their soul goes in the phylactery.
Sure. Which I every time somebody says phylactery, I think it's a penis making machine.
See, I think prophylactic is what I think.
Prophylactory.
A prophylactory is, I guess, a phylactery that's wearing a latex sheath. I don't know.
Or it makes condoms.
Or yes, it just makes condoms.
It's a condom maker, right?
What's that lich doing? Why is that weird undead wizard handing out condoms to people?
Safety first.
The best way to eradicate all sentient life is to make sure that they don't create any more of themselves. So why don't you go ahead and take these and don't have kids? Thanks. Is our health teacher a lich? That'd be weird.
That'd be awesome. Somebody needs to write that.
My teacher, the lich.
My teacher, the lich.
That's like a hyper specific slice of life anime. That's got to be a thing.
Yeah,
because there's always there's tons of shit like that. It's like that time I got reincarnated as a slime and shit like that. It'd be just hyper specific.
What a dice ooze.
A dice gelatinous cube. are very fastidious about like they always make sure they have to wash their dice every time they use them. That's the only thing, because the thing about a gelatinous cube is that in dungeons they're usually used as like janitors, essentially.
Right. Now, I think it would be cool if it was a dice gelatinous cube also had pips on it.
What do the pips mean? Anyway.
Yeah.
Should we get
Converge?
back to the album? Yeah.
Sure. Converge. Let's Converge.
So the album's called You Fail Me. It came out in 2004. And the kind of story behind how it was written, as I understand it, just based on reading, stuff on Wikipedia and some interviews from the time, is that they started working on it basically after, like almost immediately after Jane Doe came out, and they're, writing it and working on it while they were touring. And part of at least for the lyrics and the subject matter for Jacob Bannon is that for him, like Jane Doe was such a deeply personal record, and he went into it hoping that it would be something extremely cathartic and releasing, because Jane Doe is about a very messy dissolution of a relationship, and he was hoping for it to be very cathartic, and when all was said and done, apparently it wasn't, and he was just kind of disappointed and frustrated that putting all of that anguish into his art ultimately didn't do anything for him. And he started just kind of looking elsewhere, and basically wrote an album about the many different ways in which, people kind of just fail each other, fail at doing what they're attempting to do. And so this album, I think, comes out like Jane Doe's definitely not an unangry record, but I think there's just so much else going on. Like Jane Doe, I think more than anything, Jane Doe is an anguished record. And anguish is not necessarily just anger. There's so much pain and sorrow and grief and everything else that's mixed up in, when you're talking about someone that is anguished. This record, to me, for the most part, is just fucking angry. Right. And desperately so. At least on a lot of the songs. Some of them are, a bit different. Like the first full song, which is Last Light, really kind of sticks out as being something that's quite a bit more hopeful in its own way, or at least, desperately kind of pleading with the listener to just keep going, and stay strong. That song's a fucking anthem. I love that. I also got some, an absolutely amazing breakdown at the end of it, which is like I need to like re-listen to their entire discography at this point to see if there is another breakdown they've done that really measures up to the end of Last Light, because goddamn, it's such a heavy breakdown. Like
the last 26 seconds of the song.
Yeah, just amazing. There's so many Converge songs where like the last 26, the last 30 seconds of so many Converge songs is like, what the fuck is happening? Jesus. But a lot of it just comes off as being just angry, so much angrier than Jane Doe had been in a where it's just angry instead of anger and all the other stuff.
Right. And sometimes it comes off as like the scary anger, like quiet anger.
Yes.
Yeah. Something that happens here. Like in the song that really sticks out for me is
Inner Shadow.
Is Inner Shadow. Yeah.
That's I think that's it. That is like the first song off of this album that I really latched on to a number of years ago, whenever that was, when I was first getting into Converge, and when I was 19 or whatever, I can't remember.
Like 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. 2 years ago. Like that was the first song on this record I can remember latching onto, because it was different, and because I wasn't super into Converge at the time. Like, I'd listened to Jane Doe and I was like, wow, this is crazy and blowing my mind. And then the rest of their stuff, I was like, and I think, I guess All We Love, We Leave Behind wasn't fresh at that point, because that came out in 2012.
Right.
I keep forgetting how like that album is a decade old at this point. even though it's disregarding Blood Moon, it's their second newest album. But yeah, like the rest of the album just kind of didn't click with me, and that was before Redux had come out as well. And for as far as Redux goes, Kurt Ballou had basically said that he had basically, as soon as he had produced No Heroes and was like, oh, the band is happy with this, because that was the first time that he had produced and engineered a full album of theirs pretty much entirely on his own, other than, support staff and whatnot at God City, but like entirely on his own in his own studio, in control of everything.
And they really liked that.
And they're like, oh, they really like the production for No Heroes. And this album was the last one before they started to do that. And he had explained that there were a number of extenuating circumstances during this album's productions that resulted in the mixing being kind of subpar. And I didn't go back. I didn't go back and listen to the original version, which is on Spotify. I meant to go back and listen to it to pick up on some of the differences. What Kurt had said is that like most of it was recorded somewhere else, but then when it came time to mix it, they were mixing it in his studio, and this was probably this was back before they had probably all that much money to put into to God City. But like they guy
just had the bare necessities.
Hey, because his last name is Ballou,
right?
But they apparently, like, the guy that they had hired to handle the mixing was going to come up to God City and do it. And he was going to do it over 6 days. It really ended up being 3 days because it was the middle of the summer and they were constantly dealing with brownouts.
Sure.
And just losing power in their studio.
Where's the studio?
God City's in Salem, I'm pretty sure. But big metropolitan area. But they were dealing with like power outages constantly, and so that meant that they had much less time to work on it. And the mixer was also doing it on a console that he was not quite as familiar with. And so it just ended up being a mix that the band members weren't necessarily happy with, but had to be satisfied with because there was nothing else to be done.
Right. There's no other way to do this.
But at a certain point, Kurt was like, oh, I have time to do this. Let's finally do it. And I'll remix this. And I think it sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
It sounds really, really good. And I think the thing that you can tell most of all that it is like, oh, this is a remaster, is like the instrumentation sounds so good. And then Jacob Bannon's vocals kind of stick out as still being kind of sounding a little off when it comes to the production of the rest of the album, because you can't really do anything with the vocals on a remix the way that you can with the rest of it, because the vocals are what they are. And I think his mic technique in the studio has changed over the years, but I know for a fact that his mic technique on stage is he puts it in a big bowl in his hands and holds it as close to his mouth as he possibly can.
You might as well just have a lavalier at that point.
It's it's kind of a classic hardcore punk kind of thing to do.
Right.
But when you're the higher fidelity of the recording you get, the less you get out of that technique in the studio. And I think his vocal style has definitely changed in the recording studio to be, a bit less messy.
Right.
And there are times like there are times where his vocals, because like you can't understand a fucking word he says on Jane Doe. The entirety of Jane Doe, Jacob, I understand hardly a word Jacob Bannon says on that entire album. This is a bit more legible. There are times where he slips more into that, kind of muffled snarling.
Sometimes when he just outright sings.
Yeah, there are times where he does that, or just shouting too.
Right.
Kind of hardcore shouts and that sort of thing. And absolutely like no, that doesn't bother me.
Right.
I like Jacob Bannon's vocals and the way he does his stuff, but I'm just saying that it kind of sticks out a little bit when it comes to the recording quality, the rest of the album, which on the Redux version is just amazing. It's wonderful sounding.
Right, he does a lot of that. The song that's stuck out as far as the just shouting instead of doing his normal. Can't understand what the hell he's saying. Vocals.
Yeah,
I like Wolves at My Door.
Yeah,
that song. Yeah,
Wolves at My Door is a very hardcore punk song. There's not a lot of metal to be found in Wolves at My Door.
Well, and actually, another thing that struck me about that song is that the guitar work is very middle 1990s Sepultura. Also, which I mean, struck a lot of people as that's not metal either. But
yeah. One of the things that a song that also stuck out to me is the song Eagles Become Vultures, because that comes right after In Her Shadow.
Right.
And holy shit, the guitar tone on that song,
fantastic,
on Eagles Become Vultures is like, it's so gnarly. There's so much low end to it. It sounds, it's like that exact sound I can't recall hearing on any other Converge song in particular, because they don't tend to do a lot of the lower end, lower tunings that a lot of modern bands tend to go for lower tunings, and Converge kind of hasn't really ever done that.
Yeah, they don't do lower tunings and they don't EQ it that way either. They seem to EQ it more mid and high range,
which is it's their sound. That's
right.
It's how you know immediately you're listening to a Converge song. There was a number of things on here where I think this was also definitely in a period where Converge was very much grouped in with like the mathcore scene.
Sure.
And not every one of their songs on here would be described as mathcore, I think, but there's a couple of them that definitely like, oh, this kind of vaguely sounds like a Dillinger Escape Plan song. And the two were very much around each other at this point in time. Although Dillinger was fairly new at this point, but they're both East Coast bands from metropolitan area. And there's a sneeze that's trying to, or a cough.
I got a serious tickle going on here.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I'm fine.
You're fine?
What could go wrong, Kayle?
Nothing at all.
Nothing but smooth sailing from here.
Jesus.
I'm fine.
You sure?
I know, but sonically, I know this sounds like I just hit a joint, but
do you need some water or something?
No, I think I'm okay now. I think I'm past it. I think I coughed it out.
You got it out.
Yeah.
All right. I can't remember what I was talking about.
You're talking about
it sounds kind of it sounds kind of mathcore. Yeah. Especially the breakdown at the end of Last Light sounds very Dillinger-esque to me. There's a song of theirs called 43% Burnt. It's either 43% Burnt or Calculating Infinity. It's one of those songs that is very reminiscent of that breakdown at the end of You Fail Me. Not You Fail, at the end of Last Light.
Right, I got you.
But do you think this album slaps?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It'd be weird to, I mean, I guess parts of like Blood Moon is great, but Blood Moon, doesn't quite slap the same way as everything else Converge has ever done.
Right. They're experimenting with a new sound in that one.
It'd be weird to have a Converge album that didn't slap in some way. I was looking at score out of 5 reviews, comes out to about an 86. This album was very well regarded by critics when it came out. I think it's just mostly the fan base that kind of tends to forget about it a little bit, and I was one of those people. What's your favorite song?
I think In Her Shadow is the one that really sticks out for me. I like that, and like I said before, the one that really Wolves at My Door.
Yeah,
for some reason really.
I put Last Light as my favorite.
That's a great song.
I think Last Light is fantastic. In Her Shadow was my top honorable mention, and then Eagles Become Vultures, just because that
guitar tone.
I just love it, and that riff is just so fucking brawny. Coming into the beginning of that song, it's
not Bounty. You think
it's not Bounty?
It's more brawny. Gotcha.
We need a strong man wearing a flannel shirt.
Exactly.
It's Kurt Ballou in a flannel shirt is what it is,
with his hatchet.
Kurt Ballou and his distinctive hatchet. What medal are you bestowing upon this? Like Maz Kanata to Chewbacca.
I'd say this gets a gold.
Yeah, this gets a gold for me too. And I think very much so, in regards to the rest of their discography, like when I decided I wanted to listen to it this week because I came across it and I was like, oh, and then I started listening to it and went, this is way better than I ever gave it credit for. And entirely because of that, obviously I'm giving it a gold, but also because it's like, yeah, this album I think deserves to be, considered highly in the pantheon of the rest of their discography.
Lately, there's been albums I've been listening to, sort of revisiting stuff from my teen years, my early 20s, whatnot. There are some albums that I'm like listening to again and going, oh, these guys were terrible.
They sucked.
Oh, this album was awful. And some of them were, great bands that had other great albums. And I'm listening to this. I haven't listened to this in a long time. Oh, that's
this is why.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
This is why I didn't go back and listen to this. Yeah, and I mean, I like a while ago when we did that Avenged Sevenfold episode, I kind of had that feeling of just like, oh, yeah, this isn't as good as I remember it being.
Right.
But supposedly they were doing, I don't know if their new album that they've been working on for like 5 years has come out yet or not. I really don't know. I don't know if I care. I haven't really made a concerted effort to go back and listen to a lot of the stuff that I was listening to when I was like 14.
Sure.
Other than that album when we did that episode. It's like I haven't, like, I listened to a lot of Rise Against at the time, a lot of A Day to Remember, so on and so forth. And I haven't really gone back to give those albums or those bands another shot recently. I don't know if I'm all that interested in doing so. At least for some of the, like there's a new A Day to Remember album that's been out for a while. And it's like, that's just not they're just not my thing anymore. I think I remember not even really caring when the album, there might be 2 albums between the last time I gave a shit about A Day to Remember. I think the album was the last of theirs that I listened to was Bad Vibes. And I think that came out in like 2017 or something like that. I was still going to Warped Tour at the time. So actually probably would have been 2016 because that was the last one I went to, because 2017 was the No, 2019 was the last one.
The final Warped Tour?
Yeah, 2019 was the last one because 18. 18 was the last one because that was the first summer I was working at the station.
Full time.
I'm pretty sure.
Was it the first full time?
First summer full time. Because I was, for most of the week of the state fair, I was the only person in the building.
Right.
And I needed to be there. And the two things corresponded, unfortunately.
So you went to 2017.
Yes, I went to 2017. And I think that's when that album came out.
Because I remember this conversation you and I had.
The first time we ever talked to each other was a couple of days before I went to Warped Tour.
And you said, are you aware of heavy metal? And
I didn't say it that way. I was just like, I'm going to a music festival. And you're like, what are you going to? I was like, I'm going to Warped Tour. It's like a heavy music and punk sort of thing. And you're like, oh, I know what that is. And I was like, oh, this guy's cool.
Little did you know.
Little did I know you are horrifically dorky, but I can't judge.
Yes, Miss Guy who sat here and talked about how he was going to wrap his minis for the plane.
Yeah, how I'm going to transport my Dungeons and Dragons minis to Las Vegas.
Where you can do drinking and drugs and hookers. What are you going to do? Role-playing games.
Who says?
What do you mean with hookers?
Who says those other things aren't going to happen?
You do.
Well, I don't say it, but look at me. You know.
Maybe there might be a beer cracked at some point.
No, probably not.
No,
I'm gonna be in Las Vegas. There's weed. It's legal there.
Good point. Yeah, sure.
I'd rather, because every time I have done every time that I have done like a weekend where like, oh, I'm going to Fargo to play D&D for the whole weekend at my buddy's place, I always end up drinking, and I end up drinking too much, and then
that kind of ruins the next day.
I have a horrible hangover, or I start getting a hangover before I even go to bed. It's never fun. Out for me, like a long day of playing D&D combined with alcohol never ends well. And I think cannabis products would mix much better.
Very nice, yeah.
With Dungeons and Dragons.
Make sure you have lots of snacks.
There will be a lot of snacks.
Excellent. That's good.
I am one of only 2 men that will be in the building.
Really?
So
ladies.
I was about to say, so there'll be a lot of food and a lot of cooking. That's horrible of me to say.
Yeah, that's right.
But
bitches better be in the kitchen making me a sandwich. That's what you were saying, right?
Yeah, that's how that was going to come off. What I mean to say is that I am a terrible cook.
Sure.
So I will at least not be making food. Because
so this is mostly ladies?
Yeah, it's mostly girls in the group that I play with. But
cool.
Yeah, I'm not going to be cooking anything because
you can't. That's not in your wheelhouse.
I'm not gonna force anyone else to eat anything I make.
Sure,
because
that would be rude.
It would be rude of me.
Yeah,
to do that because I most of the time don't want to eat what I make for myself. So I'm not gonna force that on somebody else.
I feel you.
Yeah, we're probably going to go, like, I don't know exactly what the itinerary is for the first day, but we're probably going to find a grocery store somewhere, and I'll probably just get my own cart and be like, I want these snacks, and just load up on snacks for myself. Although I'm not a huge snacker.
No,
I don't tend to snack while I play D&D, and I just don't snack in general. I'm not really a snacks person.
I'm a snacker. In fact, most of my nutritional intake comes from snacks.
What's your favorite snack?
My favorite snack?
Favorite snack food.
My word. I mean, there's...
I know that's a difficult question.
That's a difficult... I mean, it depends on the moment. I mean, all different moods, all different feelings, all cravings, just vary during the day.
Snacks in general. Your favorite snack food is just snacks in general.
Just snacks in general. So it's mostly savory. Most of my snacks are savory.
Yeah.
I don't eat a lot of sweets.
Same. I'm not really a sweet snacker kind of person. I guess I'll go for chocolate if I have it.
Right.
But it needs to be something with some crunch to it too. Like Kit Kats, I like Kit Kats a lot.
Yeah, me too. And Twix.
Yeah, they got the crunch to them.
Yeah.
I like Reese's as well, but I tend not to get them very often these days. I'm also a savory kind of person. Either salty or savory. If I'm getting... My favorite snack is my dad's venison jerky, but that's kind of a seasonal thing.
I don't think I've had your dad's jerky, have I?
I think I have some still. It might be in the freezer. I think I still have a bag in the fridge that might... I should check on it and see if it needs to be thrown out.
Now that you say jerky, I mean, there's a monster in the back of my head going, no, that one, that's our favorite.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with jerky.
Right, a good jerky. Yeah.
This has been a thing forever, but I got a buck license this year. So
nice. It only cost you $1. That's great.
Hey. But yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
Sweet.
But anyway,
savory, actually.
It's time for us to wrap this up. So
but we won't be here next week.
Yeah, we probably won't be here next week
because you'll be in, as we mentioned.
Well, I'll be
Las Vegas.
We could postpone until Thursday night, but I'm probably going to be
tired,
pretty goddamn tired. So. No episode next week, but after that, do you know what you want me to listen to?
Actually, yeah, I was thinking about it. You know what I think I want to do is I want to go back to 2013.
All the way back to 2013.
Back to 2013.
My God.
Today. It was either 2013 or 1990. It was going to be one of those two. I've decided I'm going to go back to 2013 for this one. It would be an album called Battle Maximus.
Battle Maximus.
That's my son's name in it.
By
one of my sons. Yeah. Well, it's the last appearance of the vocalist known as Odorous Arungus.
Oh, okay. Oh, is it a Guar album? All right.
Yeah, so this is the last album before he died.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'll listen to some Guar. I've seen Guar live in concert at fucking Warped Tour of all places.
Kind of jealous. I'd love to see Guar.
It was a lot of fun. I had absolutely no familiarity with any of their songs, but it was fun to watch because it's fucking Guar.
Sure.
So yeah, 2 weeks from now we'll talk about Battle Maximus by Guar.
And that'll have to be on a Thursday too.
Okay.
Because the Wednesday is my teenager's 16th birthday.
Sure. Yeah, we'll talk about that 2 Thursdays from now.
Yeah.
Until then, you go ahead and give us a follow on Facebook or on Twitter if you want to get updates when new episodes come out. And that's how it's easiest to reach you. We'll go and do that then.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, just subscribe to our feed on your Apple Podcast app or on Libsyn's The Podcast Source. Find that in your app store and download it.
Mm-hmm.
Do all that kind of stuff. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Bronze Metalist Podcast. I'm Kayle.
I'm OJ.
Congratulations!